I'd never been too fond of anyone at my local school. They were all a little rude and boring to me. You see, I grew up in a small area with not many people interested in art like I am. I had to venture off far from home. I found myself attending a pretty rural art college. It's sort of like a normal university, except it's full of big-headed people. The only reason I'm here is because I've always wanted to be an illustrator for a kid's book designer of sorts. I've had a keen interest in children's media and classic books such as the Arthur series. So when I was sent to live at this college, I was taken aback when I realized that a lot of the other students were all fine artists. You know the kind, the ones who like to splatter paint onto canvas and claim it's art. I'm not really too big on that sort of thing, but I didn't question it. I settled onto the new place pretty quickly, and I was sharing a dorm with a few other students. There was myself, a graphic designer named Josh, a director and animator called Lily, and another one more guy called Daniel. Daniel was one of those fine artists I just described to you. His room was decorated with photographs of distorted women, and he always had this weird music playing too. It was sort of trippy 60s stuff. He also liked to do smoke, so his room smelt like an old ashtray. It was pretty gross, but he was a nice guy though, and we got along well. We soon became tightly packed group of friends. It was the start of the new term for us, and all of us came back home from after spending the summer there. We unpacked our things and began talking about what we'd done over the break. I went hiking with my stepdad, and we did one of those summer camps, said Josh. I spend most of my time with my girlfriend. We watched films and we went to see some plays too, Lily said. She did a lot of whining about her missing her sporty partner, so we were happy that they'd spend some time together. I haven't done much anything worth mentioning, just the usual stuff, parties and trips with my family, nothing that special, and I was just about to pipe up and speak when I got interrupted. I was at the dentist, we heard Daniel say. My father is a doctor of sorts, so he let me come with him and explore the hospital. My favorite place is the dentistry. I got to touch and feel teeth. It was cool. We all stared at him, a bit confused. Were you allowed to have random strangers go into the hospital rooms, let alone play with the equipment? We didn't really care. We knew Daniel was that sort of guy anyway. He was known for getting into trouble just for the sake of art. That was always his excuse. We all spent the first couple of days getting to grips with our assignments, finding out what we had to do. Naturally, my task was to study some more illustrators and mimic their styles. Josh spent some money on a new Mac for his design tests, and Lily had started playing about with claymation. It was pretty nice vibe when we were all in our dorms, talking about swapping ideas. At least it was nice until Daniel started insulting us. He's never been the same since he came back from summer break. He seemed more cold and distant. He never told us anything about his projects, not even what the subject was. It was pretty normal for him to be reserved, but never in such. At nights he'd make himself dinner, shut himself in his room, crank up the music, and not be seen until the next morning. The rest of us would go out to places, like bowling or down a local gig. Daniel used to happily tag along, but not anymore. We assumed that it was something that must have happened to him, so we decided not to press him onto it. One night myself and Josh had gone out. Lily didn't come with us. She said she wanted to see if Daniel was okay, since he hadn't been talking to us for a few days now. We could see her point and complied. She spent the evening knocking on his door, trying to get him to speak with her. Just before we left, we saw it open and Lily stepped inside before it was locked again. Brushing it off, we head out. We had gone to see a movie and then for a few innocent drinks. It was fun, but we didn't get home till around 2 a.m. When we arrived back, Josh said goodnight and went straight to sleep. I didn't go to bed just yet. I was pretty damn hungry. Drinking always made me hungry, so I raided our fridge and found some cold pizza from the night before. I was gonna go back to my room when I realized something I didn't notice before. Daniel wasn't in his room, and Lily wasn't in hers. Due to Daniel's strange behavior of locking himself in his room till early hours, and the fact that Lily never went anywhere without texting us, this was pretty weird. I went over to his door and gave it a knock, and it opened right up. It wasn't locked or anything. I assumed he and her had gone out with some, at this point, see art friends, but it wasn't like Daniel to leave his door open. I've always been such a nosy son of a bitch. I stepped inside to see if there was any signs that he had gone somewhere. His keys and jacket were missing, but he'd left his wallet on the desk. The other thing that was odd was that his laptop was on his bed and still on. Curiosity got the better of me. Perhaps this could have been my chance to find out something about the art project he had been hiding. I mean, Daniel was a fine artist, I remember, so it could have been anything. I noticed that he had a USB plugged in and 2 files on the screen. One was called dentist photos, and the other single file was a singular image named Teeth.jpg. I clicked on the dentist photos file, and it was just pictures of people's teeth, as well as plastic models of teeth. Nothing interesting. I clicked back off the file and clicked on the Teeth.jpg. The image would forever be burned in my brain. It startled me so bad that I slammed the laptop shut, shaking as I sat back. I wasn't sure if I should lift the screen again, but I knew I had to, or Daniel would know someone would touch his laptop. I raised it, staring at the image for a brief moment, before clicking away from it nervously. Then I made a decision. I needed to show this to Josh and Lily in the morning. This was seriously messed up. I mean, I knew Daniel was an artistic kind of guy, but this was insane. I quickly bolted back to my own room and scoured for my USB drive. Eventually I found it and darted back to Daniel's laptop, where I copied the image into my USB. I stared at it for a little while longer. I was trying to still dismiss it as a mere photo manipulation, but there was something so wrong about it. Perhaps it was the black silhouette, soulless eyes, or the fact that whoever or whatever this creature was, it was pulling up its mouth in such a weird and disturbing way. It almost looked forced, like this thing had been made to pose this way. I shook it off as my mere paranoia and fixed up the laptop so it didn't look tampered with before I went back to my own room. Soon enough, I heard her front door open again and the sound of footsteps, then Danielle's door locking. Daniel was back home, but there was no signs of Lily. The next morning, I waited until Daniel had gone out for one of his lectures. Since it was a Friday, Josh and I had the morning off. I decided it would be a good time to show him the image. I asked him if he wanted to see what Daniel was hiding from us, and he was confused, but eagerly said yes. I brought my laptop into the living room and loaded up my USB and opened the image for both of us to see. Josh's expression fell into shock before he started spluttering. "What the fuck is that thing?" I could tell by his reaction that both of us were on the same page. This couldn't have been the art project image. There was no way that this would pass as fine art, would it? I mean, sure, art can be creepy at times, but I couldn't imagine Daniel's teachers appreciating such a disgusting picture. I know that Daniel can be creepy son of a bitch, but that isn't right. We have to show it to Lily. We both cut off one another, then paused briefly before looking at each other in confusion. Where was Lily? I realized that she hadn't come back with Daniel last night, and neither of us had seen her that morning. When I explained to Josh, he began to worry. Lily was never the kind to just sneak off without telling anyone. I picked up my phone and began to ring her mobile. For a while, there was silence, and then from Lily's room, we heard a faint buzzing sound. Josh got up and walked inside rather quickly. He never been the one to go into girls' rooms. He came back out holding Lily's cell phone in hand, and with the worried expression on his face. She was gone, and we had no way to get a hold of her. Maybe she's just gone to a lecture and forgot her phone, I stuttered. Josh shook his head, chewing his lip from his nerves. No, Lily doesn't have lectures on a Friday, remember? She's at least say hello to us and take her phone. She lives on that thing. She never stops texting her girlfriend. He was right. Lily's life revolved around her phone. We knew there was no way she'd leave it. Suddenly, it lit up. Someone was calling her. We both looked at it and then looked back at one another before Josh passed it to me. I brought it up to my ear before speaking. Hello? On the other end of the line was her girlfriend. I recognized her husky voice. "Ah, Lily, there you are. Thank God you're okay. You didn't text me at all last night or this morning. I thought something was wrong." I cringed a bit, realizing I had to break it to her, and that I wasn't Lily. As I spoke, I heard the girl begin to get upset. She was breathing quite heavily, and I could hear that sniffling around someone makes when they cry. I felt so bad for her, but perhaps she was a chance to find out anything I could about Lily. "Where is Lily? She hasn't spoken to me since last night. I thought she was just playing a joke on me, but now I don't know." I looked at Josh with a confused stare as he began to pace around a little bit. I put the phone on loudspeaker and asked her, "Why would you think Lily was playing a joke on you? Did she say anything odd?" "Yes," her girlfriend replied. "She sent me one message around 1:30 a.m. I glanced at Josh, baffled, before I asked again, "What did the message say?" "Help me." Me and Josh were wide-eyed and worried. Lily would never pull this kind of prank on anyone, let alone her own girlfriend. She always told us how worried she was about not getting paranoid, so we knew she wouldn't send a message like that unless she had a good reason. I continued to speak to the girl, but I was getting nowhere. I reassured her that we knew where Lily was and that she'd be calling her back tonight. Her girlfriend seemed suspicious, but agreed to put her phone down. Myself and Josh paced back and forth. We had no idea what this could mean. Why would Lily send a message like that? We continued to think for a while, deciding that until we knew where she was, we were going to skip our lectures. We spent a long time thinking over things, and began to write things down, the connections we could make afterwards. Josh read out the list to me so I could think it over. First, Lily goes to Daniel's room at 10 p.m. She's locked in. Then we return home at 2 a.m. During that time, around 1:30 a.m., we know that Lily asked her girlfriend for help. You discover that neither Lily or Daniel are home yet. Daniel's door is unlocked and his laptop has been left on. You find the image and then leave. And then you return to your room and heard Daniel come in home, but not Lily. Lily is still not back home yet, but Daniel is. What the hell could all this mean? I thought over it for a while, then came to my conclusion. I didn't want to make this connection, but it was the only one I could think of. Daniel did something to Lily? We have to confront him tonight if Lily doesn't come home between now and then, okay? Josh looked shocked, but he agreed. Daniel would be our only chance on finding out what happened to Lily. Later that night, there were still no signs of her. We knew that her girlfriend would be calling soon, so we decided to turn the phone off. We didn't want to assure her with false information. It was 6 p.m. before Daniel finally came home. He looked rather startled to see us both standing there in the living room. He lightly placed his art folder and satchel down against the sofa. We both then stood up. Josh speaks first, and I could tell he was trying to keep his composure. "Daniel, we'd like to have a talk. It's about Lily." Daniel's eyes seemed to widen ever so slightly, but it was nothing I considered worth thinking over. He tilted his head at us, looking confused as he asked, "Why, is something wrong?" I shook my head. I didn't want him to think we were accusing him of anything. We would never want to get any answers out of him that way. He did look a little on edge, though, glancing away from us as he itched his wrist under his baggy gray jumper. He pushed his rather dark black bangs out of his face as he spoke. "Then what is it? Is she okay? I mean, I know she left her phone here last night, and I suppose there wouldn't be any way to get a hold of her." We didn't see anything. We weren't too sure of how to proceed, how we were supposed to ask him if he did anything to Lily without taking offense. I then realized something. It took me a moment to process before I spoke. "You said she left her phone here last night, right? How the hell did you know that?" Josh's eyes lit up. He just realized too. How did Daniel knew she left her phone behind unless they went somewhere? We already acknowledged the fact that Lily never left her phone anywhere. So how on earth was he aware of it? Daniel didn't answer. He was silent for a while before he pushed past us and walked to his room, slamming the door shut. He walked over to his door, banging on it harshly before he started shouting, "Leave me alone! I have coursework to do. I'm sure Lily will show up tonight. Just stop being so paranoid." We didn't know what to do. Daniel clearly knew a lot more than he let on, but there was no way we were going to get it out of him. We walked back to the living room and slumped down. I ran a hand through my hair. What the hell was going on? I then realized that Daniel had left his bags on the sofa. He must have been too flustered to pick them up when we stormed into his room. I peered around to his door and he hadn't left yet, but I knew soon enough he would be coming out to get his bags. In the moment of madness, I picked up the satchel and emptied the contents onto the coffee table. I could see Josh's eyes widen before he whispered to me frantically, "What the hell are you doing? What if he sees you?" I didn't care. I needed to know anything I could about Lily. She was a roommate, but also a best friend. I couldn't just leave this to solve itself. I pushed through the documents and came across what looked like a ticket. I crumpled up and pushed it into my pocket. I found a zipper-up document bag. I pushed it into Josh's hands and told him to go hide it. He complied and put it in his room. I then quickly placed the other stuff back into Daniel's bag and rested up just how it looked before walking into Josh's room. I watched Daniel go back to the living room and pick up his bags before re-entering his room again. Josh grabbed up the zip-up file from under his pillow, and we both sat down on his bed. We didn't say anything. We just read the cover of it. Teeth. It sent chills up my spine. I knew whatever was inside had a connection to the image I found on the computer. But otherwise, what we saw was nothing like we expected. It was a series of photographs. The first was looked like an abandoned room of sorts. The walls were covered in old floral paper, and the floor was just damp wood. It looked like it hadn't been used in years. The next pictures were of plastic tools. We noticed that they were linked to dentistry. You know, like needles and drills. It was pretty creepy, but after what made us both drain our color, there were photos of Lily smiling. We flipped through every single folder of her. In each, she had her big toothy grin on display. Such a sweet smile. One of its most distinctive features was on the large front tooth, the left one. We always found it cute, but now it was no laughing matter. We noticed labels on the back of the photographs, and that each tooth was on each photo was marked. There were notes attached to things like remove or replace. It knocked Josh sick, and I was even more terrified than ever. We knew we couldn't confront Daniel about these photos. It would get us nowhere. We just sat in silence for a long time, staring at them in disbelief. I then remembered the ticket I had found and stuffed into my pocket. I pulled it out with a shaky hand, bringing it to my vision and read, Group Ticket 2, Location Station Road, Date Time 28/09/2011, 11:34 p.m. We both looked at each other with firm gazes, and that was just yesterday evening. We knew exactly what we had to know and had to find where Lily was. We didn't see Daniel for the rest of the evening, and Josh became incredibly paranoid. He asked if he could sleep in my room tonight, and I thought it was a bit awkward, but I didn't mind. I mean, he was scared real bad, so I didn't want to leave him alone. While Josh was sleeping, I printed off the disturbing image for referencing, then spent most of the night planning for the next day. I had already emailed our lecturers letting them know we weren't going to show up because we felt sick, so I also checked how far the station road was. To my surprise, it was only an hour's drive, so I figured we could take Josh's car up there and look around for where Daniel and Lily had been. For the whole time, I kept staring at the Teeth.jpg image. A horrible thought crept into my mind, and I didn't want to think about it, but it could have been a possibility. Was the person in the picture Lily? Every time I think about it, I'd shake it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But it all added up. The timing, the photographs, it would make sense. I didn't want to believe it, and I certainly wasn't going to until we found Lily. The next morning, myself and Josh got ready around 6 a.m. We wanted to be out of the dorm before Daniel woke up, and to make sure to lock our own doors. We also decided to take Lily's phone with us. We didn't want to leave anything behind that would indicate we were being suspicious. Eventually we left the dorm and got into Josh's car. I had brought along a small bag of different things, such as photographs, a flashlight, a camera, and a notepad with pen. We loaded ourselves into the car and made our way towards the station road, able to pinpoint with my mobile GPS. When we got there, we found out it was a rather abandoned-looking part area of town. The place was practically deserted. All we could see were tall, crumbling buildings and little empty houses. We took the photo out of the room and began to walk up each house. We pressed our faces in the windows to see if we could make out any floral wallpaper like the room in the photograph. We spent a few hours doing this, but for nothing. We were getting pretty angry at this point. We just want Lily back. Josh got so mad he walked up to the house and walls and started kicking it harshly, shouting it from the top of his lungs. "Daniel, you sick bastard!" Just as he kicked the wall one time, we noticed it began to tear. Josh looked down at his foot and realized he had ripped what appeared to be a piece of painted paper away from it. He quickly tore down the remaining pieces to reveal what looked like an outdoor basement. The doors were rusty and scratched, but we noticed the metallic handle was clean, as if it had been tampered with. Josh looked over his shoulder to me, and I gave him a nod, and quickly took a photo of the layout of this basement-like thing. Josh then walked down to the doors and gave them a push. To both our surprises, they were blocked by a plank of wood, which Josh was thankfully able to remove fairly easily. Then we opened the doors slowly and cautiously. Who knew what could have been crept in there? It was obviously hidden for a reason. If only we knew what was coming, perhaps it would have saved us both from throwing up. As we stepped inside, we were met with a rancid odor. Neither of us knew what that smell was, but it made us both feel instantly sick. Josh gagged and coughed, covering his face with his shirt. I swallowed back vomit as I walked on. I pulled out my flashlight and shined it across the pitch-black stone room. We heard nothing, but as we walked further inside, the only smell thickened. It was getting so bad that Josh threw up nearly behind me. He quickly composed himself and stumbled right back up before we continued. As we looked around the space, my eyes were met with something on the floor that made my heart race and the flashlight drop from my grasp. It was Lily's knitted sweater, the one she always wore when she went out to pizza or bowling, with that same little torn threads on her sleeves where she chewed on it. I could see Josh from my peripheral. His eyes were just as wide as mine. The last bit of color drained from his face. I picked up the sweater, holding it in front of me, when I noticed there was a large thickish bloodstain soaked all the way through it. It started from the collar and became thinner as it went down. As I was now the one to throw up, I collapsed to my knees, puking heavily. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know what to think. I soon composed myself and stood up again, gripping at the flashlight as I put the sweater in my bag. I blurred through teary eyes and I pressed on. From where I was standing, there was nothing left to see. Then there was a flicker of a small switch from behind me, a red light filling up the corner of the room. Josh screamed louder than anything I ever heard before. My stomach was in knots as I shined the flashlight to where he had been standing. He was beside a large black table, just standing there in complete terror, blocking my view of it. I can only imagine what he was looking at, and I truly wish I left it to my imagination. I walked over to his side. There I lay my eyes on the sight before me. It was Lily. She was strapped down on the table, wearing nothing but her jeans. Her body was covered in thick layers of tape, keeping her strapped down. One of her arms dangled down to one side, and the other was nowhere to be seen. Its replacement was taped up stub covered in bloodstains. I could hardly breathe. My stomach was so knotted that my breathing so tight, all I could do was stare. I looked up at Lily's face. Her head had been forced back, and all we could see was her innocent blue eyes had been violently gouged out. They had been replaced with thick black wax that filled her holes. Her nose had been contorted and broken, snapped in many pieces, but the worst part was her mouth. Her jaw had been forced open, her maw with the same black wax. Her teeth had been ripped out and misplaced with all different directions. Her lips were stretched upright, tearing her cheek to reveal more teeth that had been pulled from her mouth. It gave her a contorted, horrible smile. Her face was now covered in streams of her own dried-up blood. I stared at her, the hand that was holding the mouth open. It was her own. Her own hand had been stitched to the ripped cheek. The flesh was torn and falling apart under her nails, which were cracked and chipped, staples and little threads holding them in place. The red fluorescent light created horrific shadows and highlighted the very grotesque feature now visible on Lily's face. I silently and numbly pulled the picture of Teeth.jpg and stared at it. It looked like the black of the real thing. They were identical. Josh had brought a shaking hand over Lily's cheek before he collapsed at the side of the table. I could hear him sobbing horrendously by her side before he passed out next to me. I felt he was on the brink of collapsing, but something caught my attention. I could feel the presence of someone else's entering my room, but I already know who it was, and I knew there was nothing we could do. I heard the door slam shut, the wood plank being placed over them. I heard the sounds of footsteps inching closer and closer until I could feel the presence behind me. I knew he was there, and I knew there was no way out. I heard his voice speak very faintly behind me. I'm sorry you had to find this out this way, but it's okay. It's all for the sake of art. But that wasn't what made me collapse. I knew well enough my fate was sealed. After he finished speaking, though, I heard one tiny sound that made my heart ache and my tears stream further down my numb cheeks. Before my vision faded away and my hands slipped from the table, I could hear Lily choking.